The key there is voice of the customer. It's really about capturing customer feedback, how, when, and where they want to give it to you. Small companies, large companies, customers have things to say and they want to give you feedback. You have to be open to listening. So, a lot of times companies make the mistakes and think, oh, voice of the customer is just about surveys and asking people, how did I do? Yeah, that's part of it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to your favorite CX show, the Engati CX show. I am your host Rahul, and today you guys are in for a treat. Like as usual, don't have to say Engati CX. We get the special people from around the globe, and we have a customer experience expert with us today. But before I introduce you to our guest, allow me to introduce you to the magic of Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code chatbot platform available across 14 channels. 35,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, Tech World, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, the video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, of course, that you guys absolutely love, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. Now, for our special guest, we have none other than Eric Smuda. And he is a trusted advisor to C-suite and board of directors that specialize in translating the voice of the customer to provide better products, services, and customer experience improvements that translate into strategic growth opportunities. He has spent over 20 years of his career in bringing new strategic capabilities across the travel and hospitality, financial software, technology, and telecom industries using the voice of the customer, CRM and loyalty functions for clients such as Hertz, HP, Evis, and many others. So welcome to the show, Eric. Such an honor to have you on board.
Oh, I'm honored to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Rahul. And good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever your listeners may be today.
The pleasure is ours. But hey, before we start the interview, all you audiences, you better subscribe to the channel. A lot of you guys don't do that. So there's this red button, big, very evident. Go click that. We have amazing leaders like Eric come through on the show and shed light over customer experience, AI, machine learning, all that cool stuff. So you don't want to miss that. So Eric, jumping straight up to the first question that I have for you is, could you please explain the architecture of voice of the customer program? Like what are the building blocks for crafting, for customer oriented programs?
Yeah, no, great, excuse me, great question. And the key there is voice of the customer. It's really about capturing customer feedback, how, when, and where they want to give it to you. Small companies, large companies, customers have things to say and they want to give you feedback. You have to be open to listening. So, a lot of times companies make the mistakes and think, oh, voice of the customer is just about surveys and asking people, how did I do? Yeah, that's part of it, right? It is part of it. But you've got, social media, you've got call center feedback, you've got website feedback, you've got people talking to your frontline employees, whether it's sales reps or customer service reps. So, there's lots of different ways that customers want to talk to you and share their feedback. And it's how do you capture all of that and synthesize that together? If you think only about a survey program, which, look, that is certainly a big part of this, there's also multiple ways to capture feedback there as well, right? One is obviously following up on a transactional feedback. Hey, how'd the call go today? What did you think of this podcast? Right? The next layer up is really kind of what we call a relationship survey. So for your listeners, hey, what do you think about Engati as a whole, right? Or what do you think about all of the ways that you do business with our company, right? So it's not about a specific transaction. It's about how do you feel about us as a brand and the products and services and experience that we deliver. But it's also about, it's interesting. It's called voice of the customer, but you have to include your employees as well.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, your frontline employees, they know what's going on. They know what's working in the customer experience. They know what's not working in the customer experience. Tap into them. They want to share their feedback as well. And so a lot of companies miss that opportunity to just ask your employees. They know. And because they live it every day, they also have good ideas on how to fix your customer experience. So, don't forget to include employees in your voice of the customer program, if you will. I think, you asked about building blocks and we talked about several. So, surveys, social media, call center feedback, digital, and website feedback, whatever it may be. The biggest challenge there, I think, or the biggest opportunity is talk about what's important to the customer, not what's important to you, right? Not what's important to all of your internal departments. Hey, how did they feel about this? Customers may or may not care. So you really have to take a customer-centric approach, or as Forrester called it, an outside-in approach, and put their needs first and let them talk about what they want to talk about.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you what's important to them and what's not. So, especially as it relates to surveys, be more conversational. Don't just hit them with long surveys of rate this and rate this and rate this. Let them talk. Let them share video. Let them share audio. Let them share pictures. Let them tell their story, because that's ultimately really what voice of the customer is about.
Right. I think a lot of it has to be, by being a good listener at the first place. All we do is put out these questions, be nosy, and customers really don't want that. They just want their voice to be heard, and your service to be altered according to what they want it to be. And that's pretty much simple. And what you mentioned about employee experience is so important and so key. Eric, that as they say, right, like your customer experience is directly proportional to how you treat your employees. I mean, because they are on the front line and they are in touch with them. So some amazing points right there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And the key point you made there is be willing to listen, right? And be open to listening. Right. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to get negative feedback. So be open to listening, and certainly don't be defensive about listening.
Absolutely. All right. So moving on to the next question I have for you, Eric, is how do we go about establishing an effective feedback system for small to, let's say, medium-sized organizations? Like, how can they be scaled to an enterprise level?
Right. No, absolutely. And look, we talked about some of those ways, right? I mean, especially for smaller companies, the most simple way is just ask, right? Ask your customers for feedback, right? The local bakery or the local dry cleaner, or the local company that people frequent every day or every week. Just ask your customers. They'd be honored that you asked. Right. And willing to share their feedback, right? Look, especially your most loyal customers, they want you to get better, right? They're there every day. They're spending their hard-earned money. They want you to get better. They want you to take their feedback and improve. So, but as we just talked about, you have to be prepared to listen. You have to, not be defensive. Right. Start with the notion of feedback is a gift, right? It really is. The customer that is upset and doesn't give you feedback and just walks away is probably a lost customer. The customer that's willing to give you feedback, that's a gift. Be open to receiving that gift. But to your question about how does a small company do this, right? I mean, look, listen to your social media. Have a social media site. Look at your online reviews, depending on the type of business that you are. We talked about ask your customers. One of the easy ways now, especially, is put QR codes around your business, right? And let customers just hold their camera up, have it link into a feedback site, whether that's a survey, whether that's just an open feedback box. Ask for feedback, right? Put something on the door on the way out. I mean, so it's real easy in the smaller and medium-sized organizations. As you get more mature in this, as you are bigger and you start to say, hey, we actually have a formal voice of the customer team, or we have a formal CX team, then your surveys start to mature. You're starting to map the customer journey and figure out, hey, what are the most important moments that matter to the customer, and how do I get feedback from them in those moments that matter, whether that's surveys, whether that's social media, whether that's the call centers, whether, I know you guys are experts in chatbots, whether it's that experience. And so how do you start to build that survey program, as we talked about a few minutes ago, transactional and relationship surveys. But the biggest challenge is how do you integrate all of that information, right? I mean, when you talked about my history a little bit, leading programs for Hertz and Avis and HP, the toughest challenge I always had was when the CEO came and said, what 3 things should we invest in to fix our customer experience next year? And the reason that's hard, right, is social media sits in one part of the company. The call center feedback sits in your call center, usually remote somewhere. Your survey feedback sitting in a different platform. How do
Right.
you integrate all of that and really understand what your customers are telling you is important to them and what needs to be fixed? So.
Mm. Yeah, definitely, definitely, and that's a tough spot to be, right? Because you have a challenge in front of you, and it's all about connecting the dots in the right way. And I think CX is all about that, like how you connect the dots, and then kind of give that experience that people require. But
Absolutely.
yeah, and this brings to my next question, and I think one of the most important questions that a lot of organizations have been facing this year in particular, and that's change management, right? So
Right.
everything's changing very, very high, rapid pace. So how does change management really work, and how can we drive it in big enterprises? And which is the most single most important factor that we need to consider when implementing something like change management?
Yeah, Rahul, I'm glad you asked that question because that's where the majority of CX programs fall down,
Mm,
right? They're doing a
correct.
great job of listening and they've got tons of surveys and tons of feedback, and then they don't do anything with it or they don't know how to do something with it, right?
Right.
Now I'm going to start with your last question. You said, what's the
Mm,
single most important factor here?
correct.
To me, it's about governance.
Mhm.
It's about how do you get organized as a company, especially at the enterprise level? How do you
Right.
get organized as a company to do change management? How do you
Mm,
get the right leaders around the table? The owners of the various customers touch points, whether it's the website, whether it's the call center, whether it's the operations. How do you get those people around the table to agree on a fact base first, right? Here's
mhm,
what our customers are telling us.
mhm.
Agree on here's the 3 to 5 things that we're going to fix, because let's be real, even the biggest companies in the world can't really tackle more than 3 or 4 or 5 things at a time,
True.
right? So how do you agree, how do you create focus on those 3 to 5 things, how do you create alignment on those 3 to 5 things, how do you use that body, that governance council or whatever you want to call it, to create sponsorship? Hey, the leaders have said, here's a team that we're going to charter to do this. Here's budget. Here's our executive leadership to clear the roadblocks that need to be cleared. And then the last piece is, how do you hold those teams accountable?
Mm,
All right. It's real easy to say, hey, let's spin up a bunch of teams and go do stuff.
right.
Right. But I intentionally use those words because they're very non-specific.
Mm,
No, how do we hold a team accountable and say, we asked you to go do this, come back and give us updates every 30 days. What
mm,
progress are you making? What milestones have you hit? What roadblocks are you seeing that you need our help to clear? And really hold them accountable for ensuring that change happens. So to me, that's the most important factor, is that governance. Um, Broadening that out to your point about how does change management happen. I think I kind of laid that out for you, right? It's listening to customers, it's digesting all of that, but then it's marrying it with your own internal data. What operational data do you have? What financial data do you have to really put some context around the customer experience and say, why did their experience happen the way it did when it did, right? What was going on with us? What were our inventory levels? Who did we have on staff at the time? And really personalizing that and saying, okay, what role do we play in this? Then it's really getting into root cause analysis. Why did this happen?
mm,
Was this a one-off event? Was this something structural that is broken for us? Once we truly understand why an experience happened the way it did, right, then you've got ideation. How are we
right.
going to fix this?
Right.
Right?
Mm,
All ideas are good ideas at that stage, right? Don't prejudge things. And then it's test and learn.
right.
Test some of those ideas. Test them on small scales. Test them with loyal customers who will give you honest feedback. Figure out what really works, and then scale it. So don't try and boil the ocean all at once. Test and learn with a lot of smaller things, and then scale the ones that really are making a difference. So.
Right. What's fantastic about your answer, Adik, is you've broken down into so many parts. So and now this looks very easy. A lot of these organizations are like, hey, you know what, change management, boom, let's change, and this is what we're going to be. But there are so many certain small nuances to things, certain way a thing has to be done. Like you mentioned, governance, monitoring, getting results, looking at the analytics, and then looking at the change, then trying out things, and then seeing if it's working for you. I mean, it's a big deal, and the organizations have to be super serious about this if they are really want to looking into change management. Definitely agree on
Yeah,
that.
no, you're right on it. And honestly, I think the hardest part about change management is convincing your internal people that change is needed and
Right,
get them to buy into the changes that we're making, right?
right.
Inertia is a very real thing in companies, and the bigger the company is, the more the inertia is there.
That's
So
true.
it's really about how do you convince your internal teams change is needed, and these are the right changes to make.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge because we are too comfortable and we are in our little comfort zones, and then shifting that is a huge task at times, especially with bigger organizations. Definitely agree to
Absolutely.
that. So,
Absolutely.
Eric, now this is something very interesting, and we'd love to learn about this. So, please tell us something about your experience intelligence platform. Like, what are the steps to build the foundation of this kind of a platform?
Yeah, so, thanks for the opportunity there. I work for a company now called InMoment, and we've built an experience intelligence platform. It's really about, several things. It's collecting that data from everywhere that we talked about, doesn't matter where it came from. In fact, we talk about our platform really as a headless architecture. And what we mean by that is we didn't have to collect the data. I
Right.
mean, we didn't have to write the survey. We didn't have to own your social media sites, but we can ingest all of that data, yeah,
Right.
and really, aggregate the data, prep the data, enrich the data with your operational data, your financial data, to really then analyze, report, prescribe actions. The other key piece about the platform is how do you build insight? How do you build dashboards? How do you build reporting for any role or any level in the organization? So what does the frontline manager need versus what does the vice president of operations need? What does the corporate user need versus maybe a store level person need? And so having that flexibility and having that design around role specific information and role specific analytics as well. Obviously then, because we're a cloud-based SaaS platform, how does it scale? Internet security, all of those things are important as well. We talked earlier too about how customer feedback should really be more conversational, less long surveys, less rating scales and things like that. So how do you embed text analytics in there, right? And really digest what customers are telling you?
Right.
You mentioned my Hertz experience. We used to get 2.2 million surveys a year.
Wow.
And that doesn't count the calls, that doesn't count the social media, all the other things.
Wow.
I couldn't hire enough people to read 2.2 million surveys, right? So you need robust text analytics capabilities to say, okay, let's digest those probably 3.5 million comments we were getting from customers and boil that down to, kind of that Pareto chart of what are they really saying here and what do we really need to do about it. So, having that robust text analytics capability is critical to the platform as well.
Right. Right. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I mean, this is like a all-in-one experience that you are providing to an organization, and especially with the hierarchy as well, right? For different roles, you have different. Definitely, that sounds wonderful. But now, talking about technologies, and there's so many coming in. So, which technologies, according to you, help you to understand customer insights in a better way? And can chatbots be effective in collecting insights and feedbacks?
Sure. Yeah. Let me tackle both of those. I think in terms of text, in terms of the technology, we talked about text analytics and we actually do multi-layered text analytics. So,
Right.
Which says, hey, we can build you an industry model, or we can build a custom model specific to your needs. But let's also, and here's where the other technology comes in, let's use machine learning, right? Let's let the computer decide, hey, we keep seeing this bubbling up. What are we learning from this? How do we learn on the fly? You know, I talked about the 2.2 million surveys. Well, okay, as it's ingesting more and more knowledge, what's it learning from those things? And so, you know, machine learning certainly a key technology. Artificial intelligence is a key technology. You know, so and here's where chatbots come into play, really, right? Is how do you extend that conversation with a customer? How do you listen, right? Maybe more technology listen than human listening, but how do you listen to the customer and respond or ask a follow-up question in an intelligent way that says, hey, as I'm learning, I'm also processing what you're saying and you know, able to respond in an intelligent manner. So I think those three things, text analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning are you know, they're here, they're now, but they're only going to continue to get better. As you talk about chatbots, right? That's your expertise or Engati's expertise there. Yeah, absolutely, that plays a role. And you know, I talked a minute ago about how do you have an intelligent dialogue with a customer from a chatbot perspective. I think the challenge, I think the opportunity for chatbots is how do I recognize where I can't go further in the conversation, right? Excuse me. Humans want it to be easy. They want their questions answered or their issues resolved simply and quickly and efficiently. And oftentimes, look, especially the older generations, they're not quite comfortable with technology. And so they would probably prefer a human experience. Now, do you do that? No, not necessarily. Chatbot can do that. But the chatbot, excuse me, the chatbot needs to also be intelligent enough and dynamic enough to recognize, wow, this customer is asking a question that I really can't answer. How do I create a live, you know, a warm handoff to a live human to get this answered? And so it can be a perfect marriage between, you know, technology and human knowledge and human experience. So, you know, but absolutely there's a role for chatbots to play there.
Right. That's exactly what we believe too, Eric. You know, yeah, chatbots are amazing. They're smart and you know, it's like fine wine. Like that's how they say. The more questions, the more queries it tackles, the smarter it gets. But you know, there's always this one place where you need a human being to help you out, and that's exactly what we do at Engati. We just you know, we just launched our live chat system wherein, you know, you can have agents, live agents coming through, and you know, agent routing is possible. So all of that. So definitely a perfect how do you say, a perfect CX experience that you provide is always a marriage between the technology and the human side of things, because at the end of the day you are catering to a human being, right? I mean, that's what it is.
Absolutely.
True.
Yeah, look, technology is great, and it often makes things simpler and more efficient. But to your point, technology is still just a tool, right?
Right.
It can enable humans, it can educate humans, but it's never going to replace humans, right? Absolutely. It should be a complementary marriage, as you just said, between the technology and the humans, right?
Right. Absolutely. So all of you guys in the audience who think you're going to lose your job to a machine, please be, it's going to be fine. It's not going to, that's not the case. Technology is here to aid you, not to take your jobs away. So that's taken care of. So no worries about that. Well, this is a fantastic conversation, Eric. Has so many fresh insights, and you know, you've brought a lot of knowledge to the table. So before we close out, are there any thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, well, you know what? You just hit on the key one there, right? Technology is not going to replace humans, and there's too many companies out there today that are looking at chatbots, that are looking at robotics, that are looking at technology as a way to replace human labor because they see it as a cost savings opportunity, and that, you know, in the short term they may save money. In the long term, it's going to cause customer retention issues. It's going to cause business growth issues because customers still want that human touch. Customers want to feel an emotional bond with a brand or with a company, right? And so technology, as great as it is, robotics as great as it will be, can't deliver that. I mean, think about the brands that people are most loyal to. And, you know, I know you're based in India, I'm here in the US, so I may give some more US centric examples, but what makes Starbucks Starbucks, right? It's just coffee. And let's be honest, it's overpriced coffee.
That's
But
true.
that relationship with the baristas and you know the fun that they create and the emotional attachment and bond that they create with their customers is huge. You know, Chick-fil-A is a brand that's revered here in the US. Let's be real, it's a chicken sandwich. Anybody can make a chicken nugget or a chicken sandwich, right? But it's that warm emotional connection that their frontline people make that makes Chick-fil-A so great. So, you know, that's what I would leave with people today, right? Is find the right marriage, find the right blend between technology and humans so that it's complementary and it's additive. You know, and find that way to create an emotional connection with your customer, because that's really the thing that's going to create long-term loyalty.
That's right. And hey, Chick-fil-A guys, if you're listening, please come to India. I've heard great things about Chick-fil-A and I'm really dying to. I mean, this is what great customer experience does to you, right? People globally want you once
Yeah.
you're good with your customers. So that's how it is. You know,
Yeah.
and well, thank you so much, Eric, for giving us your time. Your insights were really amazing, and I know our audience are really going to enjoy this show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation, Rahul. I was very honored to be part of this. Thank you.
Of course, and I'll list down all your socials in the show notes. So, guys, go check out, reach out to him if you have any other doubts. If you want to continue the conversation, I'm pretty sure Eric will help you out. And do subscribe to the show. We have amazing people coming through, and we'll see you around for the next one. Thank you.